Okay, going live, going live, going live, working probably, I think, hopefully. Um, Hi everyone, welcome to this special live stream today with my announcement that I'm writing a book this year. So that's very exciting. Um, Welcome to everyone who is joining us live and anyone who is watching the replay. I am a little bit nervous at the moment. A few things are a little bit out of the ordinary for me today. Firstly, I'm not that comfortable doing lives. I should probably do more of them potentially. I'm also out of home today. I've got a different setup. And as when I hit the live button, I'm like, we're going live, we're going live, we're going live. So I should eventually, my brain will calm down and hopefully I can get into this space and start talking more about the book and interacting with you rather than just telling you what's going on in my brain. But welcome to everyone who is joining us and saying hi in the chat. Thanks so much for that. We also have the super chat function because this is alive today. So thanks to Stephen or Stefan, for example, who wrote me a message earlier. Thanks so much for that. That's really nice. I was actually originally hoping to share with you today my new video background. Some of our Patreon community will have seen that already, so I'm really excited to show what I've come up with that. But at the moment, I have a very plain background. I'm actually on location today, which means I'm out of my house, as opposed to in my new normal studio in the normal space that I'm used to, doing a little bit of advocacy for the Australian Autism Alliance, which is really fun, but it means that things are a little bit chaotic this morning. So we also, you may have seen in the chat, we also have Maki, who is moderating our chat today. So thanks so much for that. And let me see how I can take the current comment off the screen, still figuring out the technology. And maybe I should start telling you about this exciting new book that I'm writing. So again, I've shared some of these details with our Patreon group already, but I'm really excited to start sharing more widely that I am planning to write a book this year. The working title is Unlocking Your Emotional Brain. People have asked me, am I writing a book about autism? Short answer, no, not really. It's not to teach people about autism as such. It's more to help predominantly autistic people. I think it's going to help a lot of people, even if you're not autistic, to get in touch with the more intuitive side of people coming into the room that I'm waving at, more intuitive side of your brain rather than the more logical, rational side, which a lot of us are more in tune with. When I say a lot of us, I mostly mean me and people like me and people who can resonate with my experience. So I figured if I'm going to write a book, it might as well be about the thing that I know the most about and that I can share from personal lived experience. That's part of why I started Autism from the Inside, because I feel like sharing personal lived experience is a really important thing. So a bit about my history with that. Actually, I'll tell you more about the actual book in a second, but I'll tell you about where I'm up to in the book. So I have had this idea for quite a while. While I was walking the Camino, I had a lot of time to think. I had a bit of a break. As most of you know, last year I took 4 months off to recover from burnout. And one of the biggest things that just kept coming back was that I have to write down what I need, what I want to share with the world. And writing a book feels like a really clear way to actually do that. So I had a lot of time to think about it, and that was the number one thing that just kept coming up is, why have you not written a book yet? And there are lots of really good answers for that. But the other really key point is that now is the time. Now is the perfect time. And I really need to prioritize that. So I have basically cleared my schedule for this whole year. I'm not taking on any big projects. I'm still doing YouTube videos. I'm still doing coaching and various little things like that. But I'm not trying to do any big projects, because the one big project, and I realized I work much, much better when I focus on one project at a time, so that I'm allowed to give it my full attention rather than having my attention scattered everywhere, um, is yeah, getting this book written. So I've got a lot of the ideas for the actual content. I've already got a really solid chapter outline. I'm pretty sure I know exactly what's going in there. And it's essentially what I've learned from my own emotional intelligence journey, and also from the last 10 years or so of helping others along that journey as well. So some of you may know I have an emotional intelligence course online, and I do life coaching around that kind of stuff. So what I realized, and this is the basic premise of the entire book, is that when for people who are naturally inclined to think things through a lot, naturally inclined to overthink, naturally inclined to be really good at that kind of rational side, it's really easy to underdevelop our emotional, what I'm calling our emotional brain, which is essentially our capacity to intuitively just feel into a situation and act on instinct and intuition, rather than constantly thinking about what should I do next, what's going on, how can I understand the situation at a really conscious level. So what I found is, the more I tried to understand the people around me, the more I tried to analyze the situation, the more I tried to think, what was that person thinking? What was I supposed to do in this situation? What were the expectations? And trying to like work it out like an algorithm. I'm just noticing um, there are really horrible downlights here, as you can see by the shadow if I do this. Um, sorry, I'm distracting myself. When I tried to analyze the situation, it just made things really, really complicated. And it was so complicated that I could never actually perform the social thing that I was trying to do. So an example might have been trying to make friends in primary school, for example, and I would go through scripts and scripts and scripts in my head about what could I say, or how could I approach this person, or what would I do if they said this to me, or what should I have said in this situation. The person talked to me and I freaked out and didn't know what to do and just said nothing. And then 4 days later, I've got the perfect thing that I should have replied to that situation. And that is, as it sounds, really, really slow. And what I found is that my whole process was really, really slow, because that's kind of my personality. I like to slow down. I like to focus on things. I like to take my time to do something properly, right? Give me a shout out if you can relate to liking to take your time to do things properly. Um, and that just didn't work socially. So unlocking your emotional brain is about tapping into the fast brain, as Daniel Kahneman calls it, where we come into a situation, we get an emotional, intuitive sense of what the situation is like, and we react to that situation instantly, rather than taking all the data, processing the data, analyzing the data, coming up with a good solution, and then coming back, which takes a lot more time. So the good thing about that is, it happens to also be one of the best strategies to overcome masking, because when I show up to a situation and I just react and respond to a situation, there's no room for that mask. I'm not thinking about what other people want me to do. I'm not thinking about what I should be saying or doing. Instead, I'm just listening to my body, I'm training my own body and my own reactions so that in that moment, I can just respond instantly, authentically as me, and in an emotionally and socially appropriate way at the same time. So it's all about linking those things together. Anyway, you get a bit of a sense of that. It's really exciting that it's actually coming together. I can't remember if I mentioned this earlier, but I actually joined an authorship community in Melbourne, which is the whole purpose of that community is to help people write the book that they have in their head. So that's really exciting. They have a process which I'm following, which has been really good, which has led to all of the I'm doing hand gestures over here outside of camera that you can't see, but all of the pre-thinking that's come into figuring out exactly what the book's about and who it's for and how I'm going to write it and all that kind of stuff. So that's been really good to get to a solid chapter outline. And they've got homework. I love this. It's so structured and processed. I've got homework at each stage to make sure that each step of the book writing process, because it's not just sit down and write a book. There's a whole process to get from idea to on the page to edited to published to in your hands and actually helping people in the real world. So where I was going with that, I had a very important reason for mentioning that, is that the very, very first step of writing a book, of committing to write a book is, and this was the homework, the very first piece of homework that I was given, is to tell absolutely everybody that you can find, like short of stopping people on the street and just letting them know, hey, did you know I'm writing a book this year? And that has been a really nice process. It means that I've received a huge amount of feedback, a huge amount of encouragement and motivation. And it's not just me excited about some idea in my head. It's like a communal excitement that I've been able to share with quite a few people. Not only people already familiar with my work, like probably a lot of you, but also people that I just meet at a random cafe meetup, and they say, "What do you do?" I'm like, "Well, I actually have an interesting answer to that boring social small talk question these days, which is I'm writing a book this year. Isn't that exciting?" Which means I've been practicing. What is the essence? How do I describe what this book is about in 10 seconds, 20 seconds? And so I'm really curious to hear your feedback about this, because I'm constantly refining it, and I feel like this is a very early days in the process. But the working title is Unlocking Your Emotional Brain. I'm really curious to hear if that kind of resonates. And the way I've been explaining it is it's for intelligent people who find emotional stuff difficult. And so maybe you can relate to that personally, where you know how to get by in a lot of things, and you can do things. You can do things. I can do words. One of my favorite quotes. I'm not sure if it was Mark Twain or someone. I think I might actually be completely misquoting that, but it's some people have a way with words, others not have way. So sometimes I not have way with words. What was I saying? I also run out of words if like then. Say, speak. If you try and say the words say and speak at the same time, it doesn't work. I wonder if that's an executive function thing where my brain fails to make a choice between whether I'm saying speak the word or say the word, and then it just doesn't do it. One of the benefits of saying things over and over again is that it refines the idea. So if you can relate to this idea of being really competent in a lot of areas, but just absolutely not competent, or it takes a lot of energy to do the whole social thing. Some people just do socializing naturally. They love small talk. They just go into a situation and easily navigate it. Whereas I found I needed a lot of energy. And I also found that I needed a completely new strategy, because it wasn't so much that I needed practice with my existing strategy. It was that I needed a completely new strategy, so that instead of trying to understand the situation better, I just forget that and just cut straight to the chase. Another one of my favorite books is called Switch, How to Change When Things Are Difficult, How to Change When Change is something like that. And one of the things I quote most from that book is that something can be true but useless. And an example of true but useless is, I completely understand this situation. I see every moving part and everything is completely clear to me about what is going on here. And I don't have a solution to my problem. So I often fall into the trap of trying to get more and more and more and more information about a problem, imagining that that is going to help me to solve the problem. And sometimes that helps. But there's also a completely different strategy, where instead of trying to analytically solve the problem, you just go in and make a guess. And that's the advantage of this completely different way of unlocking your emotional brain, is that it doesn't take energy. You just make a guess. And if it's wrong, you make a better guess next time, which means that it overcomes the analysis paralysis that I personally feel a lot of the time. It speeds up the process. And I've got so many stories in my personal life of where I've actually put this into practice as well, which I'm excited to share with you. My legs are not liking this situation. So, okay, I think that will probably have to do for now in terms of the actual update part of the I'm writing a book kind of moment. So in a second, I'm going to check the comments and the chat and have a little bit more interaction. It's a little bit hard for me to do both of those things. So I'll do that in a second. However, one last little announcement is that I have a landing page that should be linked in the video description if you would like to sign up specifically to make sure that you get all the latest updates about the book writing process. I'm even considering I'm considering a lot of things. So if you're interested in the book, to get your hands on it as soon as it's out, maybe even some previews along the way, then you can sign up to that through the link in the description. I have also put together a bit of a feedback form, because I'm currently trying to find the best way. I've got the ideas are really solid in my mind, but how to actually communicate them feels like it's a constant ongoing process. And so they make perfect sense to me, but I'm curious if they make sense to you as well. So I've got a feedback form if you'd like to leave your thoughts on what do you imagine this book is going to be about? What would be the most helpful content, the most helpful examples? Where do you hope that reading this book is actually going to make a difference in your life? Those types of things. And then that way I can focus the specific examples on those. So that's really exciting. So thanks for watching. Anyone who only cared about hearing about the book might lose interest now, but you're all here online, and I have a bit more time. So I would love to hear if anyone had any questions or comments or something that you'd like to share. So reading is not I'm looking at my screen down here. Reading is not my specialty, but let's go to the end. And I can do fun things like show comments on the screen, signed up. So thanks so much for that. It avoids me having to try and pronounce people's names, because I can just say thanks, username, without trying to pronounce it. So Okay. Okay, we have a question. Let me see if I can read this. So, do you mean allowing your emotions speak or think with the suggested title, which I think something like Thinking Emotionally is a nice title? Um, yeah, so it's a different way of using our brains. How do we want to understand it? Is it thinking emotionally? Maybe. I personally find the easiest way for me to get my head around it is it's almost like, I mean, it's still using your brain, but it's more of an intuitive, unconscious, automatic part of your brain. So the type of brain that I'm used to using is very ordered and structured and calculating, and it gets this input and puts them together and analyzes the situation and does it very, very deliberately. It's a bit controlling and rigid in that sense. What if I could just let go and let my automatic brain take over in a situation? Say the first thing that comes to mind. Or allow myself to express my thoughts and feelings in a situation, thinking around like unmasking, for example. So we do this all the time. Half of our day, probably even more, is spent on autopilot, like driving or eating or breathing or anything like that. So we're used to letting go in that way. But what if we could do that same letting go automatic process, but for social things and emotional things as well? So that's really the key there. Um, Showing another comment on screen. Thanks for that, around mind and heart, putting it together into the emotional brain. I don't like to get too technical. I'm not writing this book for neuroscientists. I'm writing this book for your everyday person that has a bit of an understanding that doesn't need the gritty scientific detail. So we also can get really caught up in and trip ourselves up in language around this. My personal philosophy is if the concept works, then don't get too hung up. Like if you want to call it emotional thinking, call it emotional thinking. If you want to call it your emotional brain, call it your emotional brain. If you're like, but it's not my emotional brain, it's just my brain, and my brain does emotions, and emotions are like, call it whatever you want. I'm trying to find the best way to describe this. I personally find that there are two sometimes competing things here. We call one side logic, reason, consciousness, deliberate thinking, control, all that kind of stuff. And we call the other side intuition, emotion, automatic, we call it heart, gut, all that kind of stuff. It's the stuff that happens, that it's the thinking that our body does on our behalf all the time, very, very, very quickly. So I wonder, can I even do this? Haha, there we go. Thank you. I'm going to say Stefan because I have to make a guess for the super sticker, showing people how you can do stickers and super chats and things. So if that's something you'd like to do, you can do that. Okay, we also have another question. Have you heard of the 7 thinking hats? I find it very useful in my life. I've heard a version of these. I'm not sure if it's exactly the same version that's being referred to here. When I was even well before emotional intelligence was invented, I won't say invented, coined, before the phrase was coined and popularized, there was some idea of different types of brains, different types of thinking. And all of that is part of understanding neurodiversity in some sense, because some people prefer to be more rational, some people prefer to lean into their more intuitive side. Some people prefer to take risks. Some people prefer to be more assertive. Some people prefer to be more helpful. So yes, nice comment with the thinking hats. Thank you to this person for a comment that doesn't have a comment in it, but also a super donation. So thanks for that. Maybe I should get over my fear and just start attempting to pronounce names. That could be fun. The thing is that very often screen names are not names and are not even intended to be pronounceable. So that's always a challenge. I feel like this is a really common sentiment. I don't trust my autopilot, right? How scary is this whole process when you don't trust your autopilot? So that's a really important point. And it goes to an even deeper point, which is it's really important for us to trust our autopilot. And if we don't, then working towards a future where eventually I can trust my autopilot makes a huge difference in life. Because I just don't have the resources and energy to stay awake and conscious and focus 24/7, 7 days a week. I need an autopilot to avoid burnout, essentially. And part of this process that I'll be outlining in the book is how to get in touch with that autopilot, how to re-establish your personal relationship with your personal autopilot and help train that autopilot. Maybe if you've been a little bit controlling in the past about situations, maybe you haven't given your autopilot enough hours in the driver's seat for it to be competent, which means you've got an autopilot who hasn't had that much experience and is quite, as you've noticed, not really trustworthy because they haven't developed all the skills that they need in the situation. So that's a great comment. Thanks for that. We have a comment in Spanish that I could probably attempt to decipher at another time, but not right now. But thanks for that, Victor. Okay. So maybe we should wrap up there unless people had some more questions about the book. Anyone who's just joined us, I won't go through everything again, but it's been really exciting to do the process. It's been really exciting telling people. I'm so glad that I could make this work today. I hope the lighting hasn't been too bad and the sound has worked and everything like that. So this is me stepping out of my comfort zone again and just trusting that even if it's not perfect, even if I can't control the whole situation, it will be fine. And the benefit, I keep wanting to go into the theory, but the benefit of that is when you can reduce the amount of effort and energy required, you can run more experiments. You can do another test and another test and another test and get more and more and more data and refine your autopilot even more because it doesn't cost too much and the stakes are reasonably low. So that is probably where I should wrap up today. So posting some other comments on the screen because I can. So thank you for everyone who's joined us on this live today and who's signed up to the book, and those on Patreon especially who've given me feedback already. That's been really helpful. I look forward to sharing my new video background with the world next week with my first video in my new setup. But I think now is probably a good time to wrap up. So thanks so much for everything today. And I look forward to telling you more about the book. And as I actually, the point I'm up to at the moment is literally putting pen to paper. They call it a dirty draft, which is just write everything. Don't stop, don't edit, just get it all on paper. And then once it's all out, we can edit later. So that's exciting and terrifying at the same time, but such is life. So thanks so much for that, and I will see you next week.